Welcome back. All right. So I wanted to talk about F1 a little bit, and I say this because over the last week, a little bit over a week now, um, with my wife in the hospital, I've been watching shows that we don't normally watch together. The shows we watch together, I don't watch when she's not here because part of the enjoyment of watching the show is watching it with her. And so I have speed run season 3 of Drive to Survive, the F1 series. I'm into Series 4, which is 2021. One thing that I do like about watching this all the way through is, and I provide commentary to myself, there's nobody around here except the cats and the rabbits, but I do commentary during it, and it's funny because during this season, I've already started being like, see, that guy should have stayed with Red Bull. Now that was a mistake. This, and I'm remembering stuff from 2018, and so my plan is to get through all 7 seasons and then start watching F1 races and have it so that they're recorded on my TV and I can go and watch them and enjoy the F1 races for what they are, right? And then I can do a review on here of how I felt guys did and maybe even go over standings and add a whiteboard, that kind of thing. It is one thing that I've discovered during 2025. One positive of 2025 is, for me, rediscovering my love of auto racing. And it was something that I always liked as a kid. And it's not just that, well, those cars go really fast. And it's not the accidents either. The accidents terrify me. That Pierre Gasly crash, oh my gosh. That was... And the thing with that crash that bothered me was, so obviously I didn't know what was coming. Or no, not Gasly. Romain Grosjean crash. Gasly's crash was more of him crashing out of a team, but the Grosjean crash where the car ignites, car split in half and it ignites because it's right near the start of the race, so it's full. That was something. What I didn't like with it was the way that it was edited, because Grosjean apparently came out of that fire at 28 seconds. The way it was edited made it look like he was in there for a lot longer than that. And 28 seconds is enough time in that kind of orange wall of fire to have done worse than what he was dealing with, which was his hands and his feet being burnt. I'm glad he got out of that. I'm glad that he got the skin grafting needed to fix himself. And I totally understand why he went to Indy racing in 2021. I totally get that. But what I like with racing isn't the crashes. And it's not... It's definitely not the part where, this one guy's just dominant all season. That was one of the things that I didn't like with F1. But now that I've been watching this series, it gives me the behind the scenes. I never really cared about which team people were on. I never really cared about the whole Constructors' Championship. That didn't matter to me. I was just focusing on, like, my favorite racer back in the day was Nigel Mansell. Then Jacques Villeneuve became my favorite. I didn't like Michael Schumacher. I thought Schumacher was a dirty driver. There were too many times that I felt like Schumacher was cutting corners. He was clipping wheels. The funny thing with watching this series now is I'm watching as Lewis Hamilton is doing a lot of the things that I didn't like Schumacher doing. And much like Schumacher, after he'd be like, well, it really wasn't my fault that happened. And there's the one where, and I'm in 2021, where Lewis Hamilton knocks Verstappen out of the race and gets a 10-second stop and go when they're actually racing for the championship, and then Lewis Hamilton comes back and wins the race anyways. I don't know that I like that. I kind of agree with Red Bull on this. I found myself pulling for Red Bull and Toro Rosso, which I know they're not Toro Rosso anymore. But the reason I'm pulling for them is because they're kind of the B team. I like that. It's kind of mean to be like, okay, so we've got 2 Red Bull teams, and one of them, it's the B team. So don't expect a lot out of you guys. So I'm glad to see, and I have been cheating and looking at the standings for this year. I'm glad to see they're doing all right. But it's definitely added this new depth to how much I like F1, and it's reminding me why I much prefer F1 to NASCAR or to IndyCar. it's not just the fact that the courses are not an oval. You don't have to turn left all the time. I do think that adds more interest. NASCAR, the ovals definitely. It's hard. It's hard to really get into NASCAR and stay there. In fact, the NASCAR series, I watched the first episode of, and I just couldn't get into it. I just couldn't get into it. So I went right back over to the F1 show, and I was like, I'm watching this. So I'm definitely an F1 fan of the two. And NASCAR, I mean, I respect what guys do in NASCAR. I respect stock car racing. But there's just something about that open wheel F1 look. The team I kind of feel bad for is Haas. I do find myself feeling bad for the Haas team. And yes, I've cheated and looked ahead. And I know it doesn't get much better for the Haas team. And I do wonder how much longer they're going to be around. It's interesting, too, because for 2025 now we have Cadillac coming in. And Cadillac has got Bottas as their driver. And I think Valtteri's an excellent pick by them. And I'm very interested to see who the other pick's going to be. Because Bottas kind of has a chip on his shoulder. You can see that when he races. It's interesting, too, because I think racing for Mercedes and being the number 2 to Lewis Hamilton, on the one side, yeah, Bottas is getting second in races, and he's pretty high up the championship standings. So his pay is going to be pretty good, and sponsorship deals are going to be there for him as well. But I'm sure he wanted to win, and he did in one of the episodes in season 2 or season 3. They really kind of get into that. I did think it was interesting, too, and I think it was season 3. They talked about the next Netflix curse, that the week that Netflix is with the drivers or with the team, that the team has a really bad week. I thought that was coincidental. I thought that Netflix was probably just, interviewing numerous teams and then focusing in on the one for that weekend that was having a hard time. Because it does create for more entertaining TV, right? Which means they sit with the Haas team a lot. But the Haas team definitely has its issues. Sponsorship being the biggest one. And now that I'm into 2021, and things clearly aren't going all that well for them. I thought it was a stupid move on their part to go with 2 rookie drivers. I think 2 rookie drivers, even though F1 is much younger now than it was, say, 20, 25 years ago, it feels like there's more of the young kids driving. 2 rookies is a bad idea. You have to have a veteran, I think. Unless you don't want to go... If you don't want to get points, all right, go with 2 rookies. But if you want to get points, you need a veteran driver. I thought it was interesting, too, that they make this big deal of Fernando Alonso's retirement, and then he's just back a few years later. They're just like, yeah, Alonso's out of retirement. Okay, you guys aren't going to... Made a big deal when he retired, but, I think it's just that itch doesn't go away. So fascinating. It's a fascinating show. It does remind me how much I enjoy F1. I know that watching F1 races will not take an extremely long portion of my day. F1 races tend to be pretty quick affairs. And now that I have a better understanding of the teams and of the principal, sponsors and the drivers, and I've got a really good handle on who my favorites are. I'll get into that at some point. I'd rather wait until I'm done the 7 seasons altogether, and then I can talk about who my favorite drivers are and why. But definitely there's some guys that I find myself rooting for, like Hülkenberg finally gets a podium this year. Thank God. I felt awful when I was watching. I think it was the 2019 season, and they're talking about Hülkenberg having a record for the most ever F1 races without a podium. And I was like, well, he's got to have a podium by now. And I looked him up, and I'm like, nope. And it just made me feel sad every time I saw him after that. I'm like, that's sad for Hülkenberg, man. And then it's interesting to me, too, that Mick Schumacher didn't make it. I remember talks about Mick Schumacher signing and people being excited about that. But, yeah, it doesn't look like Mick Schumacher is quite at the level that his dad was as a racer. He's young enough that he could figure it out and he could come back. But it is fascinating to see, a sport where it's only 20 people. Now it's going to be 22. and it'll be interesting to see if that clogs up the midfield a little bit more. Will Cadillac just automatically be like the worst team, or will they come in with some serious cash and maybe push a few teams? I was glad to see Williams is no longer at the bottom. The thing that I find interesting is Williams was sold during 2020. I had expected the series to address that. I didn't even see it got brought up. Nothing. That Williams had been sold. And I thought that was massive. I figured I'd get a whole episode on that. But unless I missed an episode, I didn't see anything about it. Because Williams, I remember when they were the best, and apparently they're not anymore. Mercedes, you could see too that they were getting, maybe coasting a little bit. I think when you win the Drivers' Championship that many times in a row, I think it's easy enough to coast and just kind of go like, yeah, no, we're good. I did find it interesting too that, was it Force One? The pink Mercedes, where they basically copied the Mercedes. They're like, all right, well, Mercedes has got a really good car. Why don't we copy that? Cool. I didn't know until I was watching this that you can't have your car basically exactly the same as the other cars. That there are regulations around that. I didn't think that would necessarily be a big deal, but I get why it is. And I also get why Red Bull wasn't happy that they didn't get penalized enough. I know this is years ago for F1 viewers, but I'm getting caught up, and I'm really enjoying it, to be honest. I think it's a great series. It is fantastic for getting into Formula One. So if you don't watch Formula One, I would highly recommend it. I think it's fascinating. It shows how dangerous it is. I cannot believe that a racer in Formula 2 passes away, I believe it was at Spa, and they still had the Formula 1 race the next day. That, to me, is absolutely shocking. That, because you could see that Gasly was severely affected by that. And the race team was still kind of on his ass about, and it's like, wait, I know he didn't have a great race there, but do you guys understand? His friend just died the day before on the track. So maybe back off a little bit, leave him be. And so, yeah, that's one thing that I don't understand with F1. That a racer can die, and they're like, well, anyhow, and just move on. I would at least have delayed that race a couple of days, and I know that there's a race every weekend, and there's all these continents and all this travel. But it just seemed weird to me, because you know that while they were focused on Gasly in that episode, there's no way that other race car drivers weren't thinking it every time they passed that spot on the track. There's no way. So I'm surprised that they don't have some kind of provision, because it does happen. These cars go over 200 miles an hour, and they can hit the wall at that speed. No matter how safe you make the cars, there's still that element of danger. I'm very surprised that they don't have something in place that says, okay, there was a fatal accident here, we're going to adjust the schedule in this manner as a result. Out of respect for the person who's passed, and understanding that some of these drivers might not be in the right mindset to race after seeing that. But no, they kept racing. That threw me, to be honest. That really threw me. Still kind of does. But F1 definitely creates a lot of money, and they generate a lot of views and all of that fun stuff. So money does talk, doesn't it? But at any rate, yeah, I've really appreciated getting back into F1. I've really appreciated learning a lot about these drivers, and it's hard not to really like Verstappen. Verstappen is an aggressive driver, but from what I've seen through this first 3.5 seasons that I've watched, I haven't seen anything Verstappen's done that I haven't said, okay, that's fine. That I understand that. I understand everything he's done. I am kind of thrown off a little bit by how often two teammates don't like each other. That the two drivers clearly do not get along, and they don't like each other. And they'll run each other off the track. That's kind of a surprise as well, because you know that if you're racing against your teammate and you guys touch tires and you both end up hitting the wall, now you're both in crap. So now, not only did you not finish the race, he didn't finish the race, you got no points, and the team's not going to be happy with you. So, yeah, it's very entertaining to me. It is, I think, one of the best series I've ever watched that has a behind the scenes look at the sport. Um, Also, I just want to say over the last week, because I know I talk about wrestling a lot on this channel, I have no interest in watching Unreal. I don't think it's as pulling the curtain back and behind the scenes as people think. I honestly, I don't know what I was expecting. I was kind of expecting like a full curtain drop, and not really. Not really. WWE is still making sure that the narrative fits what they're putting out there. I while I'm down this rabbit hole, I did try watching AEW this week. I couldn't get past all the everybody's attacking everybody else. I don't care. As soon as the Death Riders come out, I'm like, oh god, can I get through this? And I did, but then the next segment I was like, oh my gosh, we got more of this, just everybody attacking. I can't. I can't. Although I will say for AEW, at least they don't come out one at a time to their entrance music. They'll come out as a group of 3 or 4, which is it's nice, comparatively speaking, to WWE, that guys understand there's 8 of them, there'd better be 8 of us, or else we're just one after the other going out there to get beat up. So, but at any rate, that's the wrestling side of things. But yeah, F1, I really do enjoy it. Lewis Hamilton now the all-time leader in wins. I don't know that Verstappen ever catches him either. I think things are a lot more competitive at this point in time, and I know that Red Bull had a couple of amazing seasons after the one I'm watching, because I've been kind of doing both, which is watch the show and then look stuff up and just get those numbers and keep looking at the numbers. It's the same way that I got to where I got with hockey. And it's I know that it's odd, but like I used to get yearbooks from hockey and I'd read them 15, 16, 17, 20 times before the season even started. I'd start at the front page, go all the way through that yearbook, and then start over. And so by the time the season started, I'd be like, oh yeah, he had 26 goals last year. Yeah, he had 14. Oh, he's off to a good start. He only had 8 goals last year. He's already got 4. Like, and so this is, and I don't do that with hockey anymore like I did then. But it is kind of a similar thing I'm trying to do with the racing. So every time they focus on a driver, I will look that driver up. I will look over their racing history, especially stuff before what's shown on the series, and then also the stuff that is yet to come, and being like, oh, okay, so he does leave the team. The one thing that I do find interesting, too, is racers who have a really good season deciding to switch teams. I understand the money might be better somewhere else. Maybe they feel like they're getting a better car, but I think when you have a good season, you're taking a huge risk going to a new team, even if they have a better car. Because what we've already seen, at least I've already seen with a few of these guys, you can tell that they go from one car to another, and while the second car is a better car, they have a harder time with it. The way that it handles the braking, everything, they just have a harder time with it. And I wonder, do they think about that, or do they just sign the contract being like, I'm going to make so much money, I'm going to go over, I'm going to join Ferrari, this is going to be great, I'm going to leave these guys behind at Renault or whatever. Let's say I'm going from Renault to Ferrari. And so, with Renault I got 5th in this, but I think I can get top 3 if I go to Ferrari. What if I can't drive the Ferrari car? What if it's a completely different feel and I can't do it? And we've seen that. And we've seen teams, too, that decide, well, we're going to move on from this driver because this guy is available and we think he's better. And it's like, I don't know. And then the next season comes up and sure enough, sometimes it works and sometimes not so much. So it is interesting to see that musical chairs with teams. And it's one of those things that when I used to watch F1, I didn't pay attention to. I will definitely pay attention to it going forward. In fact, while I'm talking about it, I'm thinking, maybe I could just start recording F1 races now and start talking about them now and then keep watching the F1 series. The tricky part is it's kind of like watching sequels to movies you haven't already seeing that. And I mean, I understand that every race is basically it's a race and all that, but let's not like it matters what happened before. But I kind of feel like I don't want to diminish the amount of attention I'm giving the F1 series because now I'm following the races that are going on right now. So I got to balance that out. All right. Yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will be doing other entries in the song list once things settle down a little bit around here. Anyways, I'll be able to do that, and I'm looking forward to doing that for all you fine people on the internet. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And yeah, I'm really into the F1 racing again. It has been a long time since, like I said, Nigel Mansell. So if you're an F1 aficionado, Nigel Mansell was my favorite the last year. And Fittipaldi was one of my favorites too. And of course, Senna was a favorite. When it was Prost and Senna, I preferred Senna over Prost, personally. And I'm old enough to remember when every F1 race was called by Jackie Stewart. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for your time and your attention. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you've not already done so. That being said, I'm done for now. Thanks for your time.